All right, now, I'm not meant to play favourites, right, but this session that we're just about to have has been one of the ones that I've been most looking forward to because I have a personal, very soft spot for Chile in Latin America. I actually completed Cuarto Medio last century, which is the Chilean equivalent of Year 12, the Chilean Certificate of Education. And so I love it, basically. Chile is a country, actually, that roughly matches Australia in length, but you could say that Australia's got a very curvaceous sort of body, and Chile is like a bit of spaghetti that is stuck between the Andes and the ocean, just squished into this tiny little strip. It has large amounts of mining, just like we do here in Australia, vineyards, farming, just like we do here in Australia. It has a colonial past and a present that is often fueled by tetchy relationships between Indigenous peoples and government, and it has recent wildfires that have been incredibly destructive, heat waves. We've got so much in common with this country. And it is always instructive to hear about how other people are approaching the same difficulties that we have here in Australia and what has yielded results, especially because in some ways Chile's journey with covenants is just beginning. So let me welcome Victoria Alonso. She's an agricultural engineer. She has a background in both governmental and non-governmental agencies, and she's the executive director of the Fundacion Tierra Austral. That's Chile's first land trust organization. Estimada Victoria, bienvenida a Australia. Mi casa es su casa. Mis micrófonos son suyos.
Hello. That's lucky me. What are the chances that she knew Chile? Thank you. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be standing here in front of all of you. This is a great honor. It truly is. And I'm thankful for the opportunity you have given me. I hope it's appropriate for me to say, and because I feel very moved by what happened over the weekend here in Australia, that I would like to acknowledge the Araucano people of the land that I come from. You'll be looking at it on the screen. And I would like to acknowledge also the traditional owners of the land that we gather here today. I pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Thank you. So I'm here to represent a group of people, friends, and collaborators who are part of a story that I want to tell you today. I'll make it short. Don't worry, don't fall asleep on me. I know the party was good last night. But you may not know this. The conservation action by private individuals in Chile is relatively a recent phenomenon. Among other things, this means that nobody has written the story yet. And I'll make it, among other things, well, you invited me here, and this is the first draft, so you'll be our test. So first, let me tell you who I am. My name is Victoria, which is a great name to have here in Australia, but not such an easy name when you're not always victorious. So let me explain. I come from a generation of women, all named Victoria. My great-grandmother Victoria was born the day that people in our capital, Santiago, learned of the outcome of a great naval battle between Chile and Peru. Chile was defeated in that battle, but my great-grandmother was named Victoria anyway. Isn't it strange? I think that in a way, this story captures some of the spirit of my country and its culture. I should add that Chile ended up winning the war with Peru, even though, as we all know, nobody really ever wins in war, isn't it? So this is a story about my family understanding who they are, but about what they are been looking for, about naming their daughters after victory, and that despite many setbacks and obstacles, with persistence, good friends, and trust, we can attain our goals. So I come from Chile. Chile, like Australia, is an island. It's not completely surrounded by water, but as Anne said, it's surrounded by the world's driest desert in the north, Antarctica to the south, the Andes mountain range to the east, and the Pacific Ocean to the west. So really trapped in that really skinny piece of land. With more than 6,400 kilometers of coastline and nearly as many kilometers bordering the Andes, Chile has magnificent fjords, glaciers, icebergs, vast temperate broadleaf forest, Patagonian grasslands, the driest desert on the planet, and incredibly bountiful farmland. If nothing else, I hope you've tried our wine. During the past 2 decades, international tourism to Chile has grown dramatically as travelers come to enjoy the spectacular landscapes. Chile also shares with Australia one of the world's rarest ecosystems, the Mediterranean habitat, which is concentrated in our Central Valley, including Santiago. Found only in 5 locations in the world and nowhere else in South America, the Mediterranean habitat is the rarest, most threatened, and least protected ecosystem in my country. It features diverse forests, scrub, plant communities, all of which are characterized by a high number of endemic species. Our Mediterranean habitat, also located in Chile's most populous region, and overlaps with its most intensive agricultural areas. The most telling and alarming statistic about this habitat is that it is less than 1% protected, and the better known and celebrated temperate broadleaf forest that you know of in Patagonia is above 20% protected. So conservationists have been interested in increasing private land conservation in Chile since the 90s. There were and still are several factors that make Chile a promising country in which to formulate and implement innovative conservation strategies. And I have had the great pleasure to work in conservation at exactly that same time. One key characteristic about Chile is that, unlike many other countries in South America, more than 70% of the land is privately owned, just like here. Despite this situation, when I started working in land conservation field in the first decade of the 2000s, there were virtually no tools available to conservation-minded private landowners who might be interested in taking some kind of formal action to protect their land. So when I come to this meeting, or to meetings of land trusts in the US and Canada, I am being led in something that is still a bit of a secret in Chile. Although you have been working on private lands conservation for decades, it is a brand new thing in my country, really only about 10 years old. So I have the amazing opportunity to be able to travel into the future. I get to see what you and other countries are doing to create and secure new protected areas through private action. This makes such a good sense for Chile, where so much of the land is private and where public conservation leadership is really weak. So we call our story the Chilean Private Lands Conservation Initiative. It's not a very poetic name, but it means a lot to us. Our initiative is motivated by the vision that Chile's impressive export-driven and export-dependent economic success must now be accompanied by sustainable produced commodities, sustainable land management, and substantially increased land conservation. The cliches of this being a win-win situation in Chile, that Chile can do well by doing good, have genuine resonance for us at this moment. Success will mean that our businesses and landowner communities will lead the rest of South America and even much of the world in sustainable management of the country's resources, and that Chile's most irreplaceable ecological treasures will be protected for future generations and visitors alike. Fingers crossed. I don't know. With a very humble beginning, a group of smart people, good friends, and the inspiration of private land conservation movements in other countries, we started to think about how to create a private lands capacity and action in Chile. We were open to inspiration, especially by the land trust movement in the United States. And to tell you a story, there are some key words that I'll mention now and describe later. So we had vision and imagination, creativity, broad-based talent, models, commitment, patience, sometimes impatience, tangible results, and humor, of course. So starting with vision and imagination, at that humble beginning, it was absolutely essential that the people who have emerged as leaders of our initiative had the vision and imagination to see the need for and the potential of private lands conservation tools in Chile. We needed to have imagination to envision a future in which these tools were created and made available to private landowners, and that legally protected private areas might create a rich and integrated mosaic of network of public and private protected areas. And we had that kind of vision and imagination in a country where none of this has happened yet, where there were literally no examples to study or learn from on the ground. Having that kind of vision and that sticking to it is a rare thing. The Chilean Private Lands Conservation Initiative was born, and this was 2006. And it was a product of a unique, synergistic, and well-timed collaboration between one of Chile's most prominent business councils, international NGOs, and several far-sighted and influential representatives of the country's private sector. The initiative eventually forged a practical, results-oriented approach based on 3 strategies used to launch private land trust movements elsewhere. So first, we need to develop and test flexible legal arrangements modeled after conservation easements or covenants to protect private lands. Then we need to establish financial incentives, so private landowners were encouraged to donate their land or their title, including possible changes to Chile's tax laws, as well as outright financial compensation. And thirdly, we needed to protect land, especially severely underconserved Mediterranean habitat, using these new private lands conservation tools. Then, creativity. So we had the vision and imagination that I just talked about to launch the initiative in the first place. And we also needed to bring creativity and innovation to the effort. We needed to think broadly, to open up to new ideas, to solicit input from experts around the world, to be willing to improvise and adapt, while being true to the Chilean identity and experience. In one of the most critical breakthroughs of private land initiative, a gifted young lawyer, José Manuel Cruz, had a bold insight about conservation easements, which are very similar to conservation covenants here in Australia. He suggested that rather than struggling to adapt a legal instrument, a conservation easement, that are part of English common law to the Chilean civil code or Napoleonic legal system, it might make better sense to transcend this difficulty altogether by creating a whole new category of conservation land ownership. This agreement would be fully grounded in civil law and would be called the Derecho Real de Conservación, which is roughly translated as real right or real law for conservation. To accomplish this, Cruz and his colleagues developed a brilliant, simple, but widely ambitious proposal to amend Chile's civil code. It's like making a mid-level constitutional amendment, which had happened only 3 times in the country's history. This would create a new category of private property ownership to a state-of-the-art conservation easement or covenant. It would be flexible, functional, and perhaps most important, enforceable. An instrument developed specifically to accommodate private conservation in Chile. And there's another additional special thing about this tool. It was created in a positive spirit. It is about something else you can do with your land instead of what you cannot do with it. I should also add that Father José Manuel Cruz did this genius invention, and became a priest. In April 2008, the Derecho Real de Conservación legislation was formally introduced in Chilean Congress. The Derecho Real de Conservación took 8 years to pass, which is fast for our countries. We went to Congress every week for 8 years. Most of the debate and some opposition focused on how the law might interfere with mining rights and mining projects, which have enormous power in Chile. The creation of the Derecho Real de Conservación represents the biggest breakthrough for the Chilean Private Lands Initiative, and it also has potentially profound implications for other countries around the world that use Napoleonic legal system. That means most of Latin America, many European countries, and some African countries as well. Because if we could amend our civil code to create a Derecho Real, then technically so could any other civil code country in the world. This has meant that our initiative and the Derecho Real has attracted interest from conservation leaders in places like Argentina, Costa Rica, Mexico, Spain, and other countries with civil legal systems and large areas of privately owned land. Broad-based talent. This is a quality of the project that might be overlooked. We have brought together a group of very talented, very smart people to work on the initiative. And they have been doing so literally for decades. The intelligence, charisma, expertise, commitment, drive, and focus of the people involved have been essential to the success of this effort. So I'm going to mention some of them in case they're listening. So Henry, Pancho, Michael, Catherine, Rafael, probably sleeping, but just in case. Chile is also a country that is dominated by its private sector, and in particular by 4 big extractive land-holding industries: agriculture, forestry, mining, and fishing. It was imperative for us to have credible leaders from the private sector as the face of the initiative, not NGOs. This is exactly what we and they did, and we are extremely grateful for their extraordinary leadership. We have also been able to attract people from Chile and far beyond with broad-based technical expertise in disciplines like law, environmental policy, congressional strategy, science, negotiation, public and private conservation, and many more. And then models. We learned about and were inspired by the successful and effective models of private land conservation in the US, Canada, and Australia. We have benefited greatly from our relationship with the US Land Trust community, are so proud to have Ron Wentworth, the former president of the US Land Trust Alliance, on our board of directors. Now we are privileged to be able to learn from and work with conservation leaders in Australia. So thank you, Gareth, Mel, James, Vic, Jane, Ari, so many others. And again, we have been smart about adapting these private lands conservation models to Chilean law and to the Chilean experience. Commitment and patience. Everyone who has been part of Chilean private lands conservation initiative or private lands in general has a deep love of their natural environment, its landscape and its beauty and ecological significance, and demonstrates a fierce commitment to our goals and objectives. The core leaders of this effort are also highly focused and driven for results, and they have remained committed over a long period of time. One of the most important lessons to be learned from this effort and experience is that securing change of this complexity and that is so unprecedented takes a lot of time. We have been incredibly fortunate to have a group of leaders who have remained committed, focused, and actively engaged for almost 20 years. This kind of perseverance and continuity also requires patience. Again, big changes takes time, and we have often had the patience to succeed. On the other hand, sometimes we have needed to be a bit politely impatient, to demand results, to push a bit harder than some might like. To have all these qualities in the leaders of this effort seems rare, and it's certainly invaluable. And then tangible results. Another key lesson that we have learned from existing private land conservation movements in the US, Canada, and Australia is that it is applied, that it's practical, that it's results-oriented work. We understand that this practical approach is essential to the great success of private lands conservation in these countries, and it has inspired and guided our work from its inception. Throughout this effort, we have pursued an overarching goal of creating a set of enabling conditions, tools, and strategies that can unleash the power of private lands conservation in Chile, which is something that we have witnessed firsthand and been inspired by other countries, including yours. We measure our success by how effective we are in conserving ecologically and scenically significant landscapes, especially properties at the ecosystem scale and those that are resilient to the impacts of climate change. We remain strongly committed to increasing the pace and the scale of our land conservation efforts, and we bring a mixture of practicality and ambition to our work. This has caused us to add another critical goal to the list, which is to build a movement and to create a rich mosaic of permanently conserved public and private protected areas in our country. We have been working on this for 17 years, but we feel like we've just gotten started. Humor. Lastly, there are some important human qualities that are necessary to sustaining an initiative that has lasted as long and experienced the success that we have. The core leaders of this effort generally like, respect, and trust each other, and we all bring a refreshing sense of humor to our work. Of course, we have good and bad days, so these qualities, especially humor, seem essential to our long-term success. We've also been incredibly fortunate to receive support from generous donors who have enabled us to pursue this big ambitions for private land conservation in Chile. Now, as ever, we're all about protecting places, big places, unique places, endangered places, public places, and secret places. Thank you, and Thinking about the title of this conference, I would like to conclude by telling you a few stories about how people are united for nature. So we just signed our biggest Derecho Real de Conservación agreement some weeks ago. After more than a year of discussions, negotiation, and planning, the Durr family protected a truly magnificent 10,000-hectare property comprised of Mediterranean habitat and temperate forest. I invited our team to witness the moment that we signed the agreement. The elderly landowner brought his granddaughter, Martina, to this momentous occasion as well. Before signing the DRC document, he asked us to explain to Martina what we were doing. At the end of our dry and technical explanation of the DRC process, the grandfather translated to Martina. This signature means that you, and only you, will be able to take care of our land in perpetuity. Congratulations. What the landowner was trying to say to his granddaughter, and to celebrate, was that he was not imposing anything on his family. Instead, he was making a gift and leaving a legacy to the next generation. For the first time, I was able to witness the true power of our work and how the grandfather, the son, and the granddaughter were united for nature. Also this month, we have established the first legal precedent of a Derecho Real de Conservación stopping a mining project. This project would be irreparably damage critical Mediterranean habitat. We joined in this effort with the wonderful landowner of La Giganta. And then again, together, we were united for nature, and we halted this destructive project, and it's a wonderful feeling. Fundacion Tierra Austral is Chile's first land trust. We have a smart, hardworking, talented, and funny staff of 12. I was the founder of Tierra Austral and was the first chair of the board back when we had only one single staff person. When I was invited to become the executive director of our land trust, I must confess that I didn't want the job. I seemed too big, too difficult, too unknown. It was a little bit like sitting in front of a blank page with nothing to guide me. The truth is that the page was not blank because of possibilities like today, here at this conference. Being able to witness what you have accomplished and how your process is still evolving like ours turns that blank page into a beautiful, detailed map and another example of how everyone in this room is united for nature. Thank you.